Hello YouTube and welcome to my very first review. I am first apologizing for the funny voice. I have caught a bit of a cold and you can sort of guess the end of that. But to start off, I'm going to go with the most hyped up movie of the year, The Avengers. So, in a nutshell, what did I think?
This was awesome.
However, it is not without its problems. First off, I'm going to give my opinion on what I like to call the Avenger prequels. Starting at the beginning, Iron Man. I love the first Iron Man. Thought it was a really good movie and probably the best of the prequels. Yeah, its villain got sort of pushed aside and there wasn't really a third act, but the good far outweighed the bad. I didn't really like the second one. Thought it was kind of annoying with people constantly talking through each other. That's not funny. We simply don't understand what they're saying. Even if they are making funny jokes, we can't make them out. However, it did improve on the action scenes and on the villain, so yeah, a bit of a mixed blessing. The Incredible Hulk was okay, nothing spectacular, but it did have some pretty cool action, you know, with the Hulk and the Abomination going up against each other. Thor was a lot better, with more character and, well, basic fish out of water story, some awesome visuals more than made up for it. Captain America is probably my favorite, and in terms of how good it is, it's just behind the first Iron Man, with a very likable main character and an enjoyably over-the-top villain, and it was a huge amount of fun. So, let's go over the good stuff. First of all, the action scenes. They basically spend the entire third act of the movie blowing up New York, but in a very compelling way. The action feels big with a lot of sweeping shots moving along huge sections of the city, which also give it a tangible feeling of speed and size. During this third act, it never slows down to work in a little more story. Everything that had to be explained by this point is already explained. Yet there is still the feeling, and the movie never lets go of that there is a lot at stake here. I also love that this movie gets pretty creative in its settings, albeit that some of them are a bit pointless. I'm not going to say what that is, that would be spoiling it. But like I said, the climax of the movie is in downtown New York with Stark Tower, a building built by Iron Man to show the world his massive ego, at its center. And the movie really does make the most of that, because this way it's completely free and in design and layout of the set, optimizing it for the action sequences. Another good thing about this movie is the main characters. They're played by really good actors who really make them surprisingly believable for something this silly. Iron Man and the Hulk are the only ones with a story arc in this one, while Thor, Captain America, Black Widow and Hawkeye basically remain the same. This isn't a problem though, since they were already introduced. Designs have also been changed with mixed results. The Hulk looks better in this movie than he did in his own. I thought he looked a little bit veiny in The Incredible Hulk. Iron Man looks the same way he did in the first movie for the best part, which, well, I think he looked fine in both. And Captain America now looks a lot more like a cereal mascot. You know how he also had this going for him in his own movie, but it was in a badass sort of way? Well, that has been dropped here. Now he just looks like a human bullseye, with the same dignity as said cereal mascots. Acting-wise, this movie does fine. Since they have the same actors they had in the prequels, except for the Incredible Hulk, they have a sense of familiarity about them. I heard plenty of people say that they liked Edward Norton better as Bruce Banner before the movie came out, but I don't think that's fair. Not only does Ruffalo do a fine job, but he also has a few good lines, and he's definitely more convincing as the brilliant scientist than Norton, no disrespect. Downey Jr. is of course brilliant as Tony Stark. Hemsworth puts down a good Thor again, and the same can be said for Chris Evans in Captain America. But the ones who finally get some time on screen are the ones I've been waiting for. Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye and Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. I'll start with Renner. He makes Hawkeye fairly realistic and again has a few good jokes himself. Lastly, Black Widow. Well, guys, seriously. A Russian-speaking, ass-kicking Scarlett Johansson. I mean, damn. I'd love to tell you all about what I was thinking during those scenes, except that I want to keep this review suitable for children, so yeah, you're gonna have to keep me to this one. But now for the bad side. And I know that this movie has been praised into heaven by critics, but I respectfully disagree somewhat. And I know that you're probably going to be surprised that it made a few mistakes, and I really don't like to say this, but it made mistakes. And some. What this basically amounts to is an action movie that blew most of its budget on big and impressive stunts, but cut a few corners on the story and character side. I said that only Iron Man and the Hulk are the only ones with a story arc, but therein also lies a problem. You see, with the other ones who had their own movie, they are relying on the most probable scenario that you saw the prequels. However, it prefers that you haven't seen Iron Man 2 and The Incredible Hulk, because those two basically have the same character arc. Stark has to learn how to be a team player again, and Banner has to find a way to control himself. Sound familiar? Well, it should. The other two, Hawkeye and Black Widow, barely get any screen time. Hawkeye is so underdeveloped that you could almost run the first two acts without him, and he doesn't really kick in until the destruction of New York. While I can't say the same for Black Widow because she does get more screen time, I do get a feeling there was more to pull sort of that ultimate femme fatale thing. One of the most noticeable things that throughout the entire movie is there is a very Transformers-esque feel to it. Here's the basic premise. Somehow, an all-powerful alien cube-shaped artifact ended up on Earth and the aliens are unleashing a war to get it back. However, one of them is helping us, joined by a small group of heroic fighters backed up by a secret government agency who had the cube the entire time. Not only is that promise almost identical to the first Transformers, but the action feels surprisingly similar to Dark of the Moon. You got this giant worm thing, giant laser shooting into the sky to create a portal between worlds, heroes flying and jumping through buildings, and, well, you can basically fill in the blanks yourself. One other thing that it has in common with Dark of the Moon is its pacing. Both the first and the second act consist mostly of story interrupted by a few short action sequences, only to give way to more story afterwards. The second one is definitely leaning more into action, but it's sorta slow. But again, that isn't until the third act hits home. It's just action all the way. And like I said, it is good action. Don't get me wrong. They also throw in some comedy, which in the first two acts, it sort of flows naturally. It generally blends in fairly well, and I must say, most of the jokes actually work. They're not drop dead hilarious or anything, but then again, this isn't a comedy. It's a serious movie. I guess you already can feel the butt hanging in the air. So you've probably guessed that it all goes wrong in the third act. They still try to keep up the same amount of jokes, which really breaks up the natural flow of the action, and it makes the jokes feel kind of forced. And it's not like they're that unfunny, but it's the action. It should have been action, not comedy anymore. Whatever conclusions you draw from this review, don't let it be that the Avengers isn't good or worth the time, because it certainly is. I just don't think it's as good as critics say it is. It borrows too heavily from Transformers and is almost picking out for you which prequels you shouldn't have seen. I guess the whole general idea behind it is that the prequels already took care of setting the movie up, and they just wanted to pour in as much action as possible into this one. So, if you've watched prequels and looked at this as a final installment, though it's not because it ends with the announcement of a sequel, I guess it works. As a standalone film, however, it doesn't. With that said, everything I mentioned in the negative side is mostly overruled by, well, this is the Avengers. It doesn't make it any less awesome. I just notice it because I'm paying attention to that kind of stuff. I did enjoy this movie, so definitely give it a go.